The locket was warm against her fingers, the only warmth she'd felt in weeks. Silver-plated, tarnished with age, it hung from a chain that had somehow survived whatever hell had torn her memories away. She couldn't open it. The clasp was bent, twisted, as if someone had tried desperately to destroy it. But through a crack in the metal, she glimpsed a photograph. A face she didn't recognize, yet something in those eyes felt like coming home. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 months she'd wandered these northern territories, a ghost among the living. No name echoed in her mind when she searched the void where her memories should have been. No home called to her from the emptiness. The doctors in Millfield had found her half frozen by the railroad tracks. No identification, no belongings, except the clothes on her back and this broken locket. They'd named her Jane, fed her charity soup, and sent her on her way with wishes, too hollow to warm her bones. But hope had died somewhere in that white void where her past used to live. If you're watching this, you're about to witness the most extraordinary tale of memory, identity, and the price of truth I've ever uncovered. How a woman with nothing but questions and a broken locket would uncover a conspiracy that reached from the highest offices to the darkest corners of the frontier. How she'd partner with the most feared bounty hunter in 3 territories to uncover not just her identity, but a truth that powerful men would kill to keep buried. Subscribe now, because this story will change how you see the thin line between justice and vengeance. The newspaper called him Death's right hand. Samuel Chase, though most folks were too scared to use his name, had collected more bounties than any man living. They said he could track a man across stone, through water, even through time itself if the price was right. What they didn't say, what they couldn't know, was that Chase had been tracking one particular quarry for 7 years. Not for money, for answers. Jane first saw him in Copper Falls, a mining town that clung to the mountainside like a dying animal. She'd been sweeping floors at Morrison's saloon for 3 days, earning enough to buy stale bread and a corner to sleep in. When Chase pushed through the batwing doors, the entire room fell silent. Men who faced claim jumpers and grizzly bears without flinching suddenly found urgent business at the bottom of their glasses. He wasn't what she'd expected. Medium height, lean build, wearing a coat that had seen better decades. But his eyes, pale, green like winter ice, missed nothing. They swept the room, catalogued every face, every exit, every weapon within reach. When those eyes found hers, something flickered across his features. Recognition? Confusion? She couldn't tell. Chase approached. The bar, spurs clicking with each measured step. "Whiskey," he said to Morrison, voice carrying the weight of graveyards, "and information." Morrison poured with shaking hands. "What kind of information, Mr. Chase?" "The kind involving a woman, early 20s, blonde hair, traveling alone. Might not remember her own name." His gaze drifted to Jane again. Might be wearing a silver locket. Jane's hand flew to her throat, fingers instinctively covering the chain. The movement wasn't lost on Chase. He downed his whiskey in one pull, left coins on the bar, and walked toward her. The saloon seemed to hold its breath. "Outside," he said simply. She should have run. Every survival instinct screamed at her to bolt for the back door, lose herself in the maze of mining tunnels that honeycombed the mountain. Instead, she found herself following him into the cold mountain air. Chase stopped by a hitching post where a black gelding waited, patient as stone. He turned to study her face under the starlight, and she saw something in his expression she hadn't expected. Uncertainty. "What's your name?" he asked. "Jane. Least, that's what they tell me." "They tell you?" His eyes narrowed. "You don't remember?" She touched the locket again, a gesture that was becoming as natural as breathing. "I don't remember anything before 3 months ago. Woke up in a doctor's office in Millfield with nothing but this. She pulled the chain from under her shirt, watching his reaction. Chase went very still. His hand moved toward his gun, stopped, dropped back to his side. "Do you know what you're wearing?" "A locket. Broken. Can't open it." "May I?" He held out his hand, and something in his voice, a note of desperate caution, made her step forward. His fingers brushed hers as he took the locket, and she felt a jolt that had nothing to do with the mountain cold. Chase examined the bent clasp, the tarnished silver, the crack that revealed a sliver of photograph within. A sound escaped him. Half laugh, half sob. 7 years, he whispered. 7 goddamn years I've been hunting ghosts. "What are you talking about?" He handed the locket back, but his fingers lingered a moment too long. "Your name isn't Jane, and I'm not here to collect a bounty on you. I'm here to find out why someone wanted you to disappear so badly they made sure you couldn't even remember, and who you are." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The words hit her like a physical blow. Someone had done this to her, deliberately stolen her memories, her identity, her entire life. The possibility was more terrifying than the emptiness had been. Who? Not here. Chase glanced around the quiet street, but she noticed how his hand never moved far from his. Weapon. Too many ears in a mining town. Too many people who sell information for the right price. He untied his horse's reins. "We need to ride. I'm not going anywhere with you. I don't even know who you are." "Samuel Chase. And right now I'm the only person who can give you answers." He swung into the saddle with fluid grace. "But more importantly, I might be the only one who can keep you alive long enough to hear them." "Alive? What do you mean, alive?" His expression darkened. The kind of people who can make someone disappear completely don't usually leave loose threads. "If I found you, others will too, and they won't be coming to help you remember." As if summoned by his words, the sound of multiple horses reached them from the far end of town. Chase's horse danced sideways, sensing his rider's tension. "Choose now," he said urgently. "Come with me and maybe find out who you are, or stay here and die as Jane Nobody." The sound of hoofbeats grew louder. Jane could see riders now, 3 of them pushing their horses hard through the muddy street. Something about their purposeful approach sent ice through her veins. She grabbed Chase's stirrup. "Pull me up!" He yanked her onto the horse behind him just as the first shot cracked through the night air. They were moving before the echo faded, Chase's gelding finding footing on steep trails that seemed impossible in the darkness. Jane clung to his coat as they climbed higher into the mountains, leaving Copper Falls and any chance of a simple life far below. Behind them, shouts echoed off the canyon walls. Their pursuers weren't giving up easily. "Who are they?" she called over the wind. "Men who've been paid very well to make sure you never remember," Chase replied without turning. "Question is, what did you know that was worth stealing your entire life to keep secret?" They rode through the night, following paths that seemed carved by mountain goats rather than humans. Chase moved with the confidence of someone who knew these trails intimately, guiding them through stands of pine and across rushing streams that could have hidden 100 ambushes. As dawn painted the peaks rose and gold, they stopped at a protected overhang of rock. The black gelding was lathered but steady, bred for this kind of punishment. Jane slid down, her legs shaking from the ride and the adrenaline crash. "Are they still following?" Chase dismounted, immediately checking their back trail. "Always assume yes. That's how you stay alive in this business." He pulled saddlebags from the horse, extracting coffee and hardtack. "We'll rest here for, an hour. These rocks will hide our fire, and I need to show you something." As water boiled over a small, smokeless fire, Chase produced a leather portfolio from his saddlebags. 7 years ago, I was hired to find a woman named Catherine Belmont, daughter of Judge Ezekiel Belmont, Territorial Supreme Court. She'd disappeared the night before she was supposed to testify in a federal case. Jane felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. I think you're the reason I've been chasing ghosts for 7 years. He opened the portfolio, revealing a daguerreotype. Catherine Belmont, taken 6 months before she vanished. Jane stared at the photograph. The woman in the image was hauntingly familiar. The facial structure, the way she held her chin, even the way her hair fell. But it was the locket visible around her neck that made Jane's world tilt. Identical, exactly identical to the one she wore. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I would remember. Would you? If someone had the resources to make you disappear completely, don't you think they'd have the resources to ensure you disappeared?" Chase tucked the photograph away. Catherine Belmont had evidence that could bring down some of the most powerful men in the territory. Mining rights fraud, federal contracts awarded to phantom companies, judges bought and sold like cattle. Jane touched her locket, tracing its familiar weight against her chest. "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that gets people killed, or worse, erased entirely." Chase poured coffee into 2 tin cups, handed her one. "Judge Belmont hired me to find his daughter. Been hunting for 7 years, following rumors, ghost sightings, false leads. Every trail went cold until 3 weeks ago. What changed 3 weeks ago? A telegram from Dr. Henley in Millfield. Said he had a patient amnesia case found by the railroad tracks. Young woman, blonde hair, wearing an unusual silver locket." Chase's smile was grim. "Henley owed me a favor from when I cleared his town of some troublesome claim jumpers. Said something about the woman bothered him, something he couldn't quite identify." Jane set down her coffee, her hands trembling. "So you came to collect a bounty?" "No." Chase met her eyes. "I came to find out if Catherine Belmont was still alive. And if so, why someone went to such elaborate lengths to make her forget who she was." They were interrupted by the distant sound of gunfire. Chase was on his feet instantly, sand kicking dirt over their fire. "That's not hunting shots," he said grimly. "That's a fight." He led them to the edge of the overhang where they could see down into the valley. Smoke rose from what looked like a small settlement, and even at this distance they could see riders moving between the buildings. "Prospector camp," Chase said, pulling out a brass telescope. "Probably 50 people, families mostly." He cursed, under his breath. "It's the Cooper gang. They're burning them out." Jane had heard of the Cooper gang even in her few months of scattered memory. A group of men who specialized in claim jumping and intimidation, taking what they wanted and burning what they couldn't steal. "We have to help them." Chase lowered the telescope. "We're 2 people with limited ammunition, no backup, and a posse already hunting us. Riding down there is suicide. So we just watch them burn out families, children?" Something hardened in Chase's expression. "You don't remember being Catherine Belmont, but you still have her sense of justice. That might be the strongest evidence yet." Before Jane could ask what he meant, they heard hoofbeats on the trail below. Their pursuers had found them. Chase handed her a rifle from his saddle. "You remember how to use one of these?" Jane checked the action automatically, the movements flowing like water despite her amnesia. Apparently. Muscle memory. Interesting. Chase took position behind a boulder. "Here's the situation. We can fight them here, probably win, but that gunfire will bring the Cooper gang. We can run, but they'll track us, and we'll be fighting. On their terms eventually. Or," his smile was wolf-like, "or we do something they won't expect." Jake could see 3 men working their way up the trail, spread out in a professional formation. These weren't random bounty hunters or opportunistic thugs. These men moved like soldiers, like professionals paid well for a specific job. "What kind of something?" she asked. "We go help those prospectors. Nothing creates chaos like mixing 3 different sets of armed men who all want different things." Jane stared at him. "That's insane." "Probably, but it might also be brilliant, and more importantly," his expression softened slightly, "it's what Catherine Belmont would have done." They moved fast, leaving the overhang and using the rocky terrain to their advantage. Chase's plan was simple and completely mad. Instead of fighting or running, they would descend into the valley, help drive off the Cooper gang, then use the confusion to disappear while their pursuers dealt with armed, grateful prospectors. As they picked their way down game trails barely wide enough for the horse, Jane found herself studying the man who claimed to know her true identity. Samuel Chase, Death's right hand, was nothing like she'd expected. He moved with lethal precision, yes, but there was something else. When he'd looked at that photograph of Catherine Belmont, she'd seen something in his eyes she hadn't expected. "How well did you know her?" Jane asked during a brief stop to rest the horse. "Catherine Belmont?" Chase adjusted the geldings. Bridle, not meeting her eyes. "Well enough. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting right now." His tone warned against further questions. They could hear the fighting more clearly now. Shouts, gunfire, the whicker of frightened horses. Smoke grew thicker as they approached. "Last chance to reconsider," Chase said as they reached the final ridge above the settlement. "Once we do this, there's no going back." Jane checked her rifle again, amazed at how natural the weapon felt in her hands. "There's already no going back. Someone stole my life. Maybe helping these people will help us figure out why." Chase nodded approvingly. Catherine Belmont definitely would have said that. They crested the ridge together, looking down at a scene from hell. The Cooper gang had set fire to several buildings and were systematically looting others. Jane could see families huddled behind overturned wagons, men returning scattered gunfire, children crying. "How many?" she asked. 8, maybe 10. More than us, fewer than we'd face if we kept running. Jane surprised herself by laughing. "When you put it that way, it almost sounds reasonable." Chase turned to her, and for a moment his careful mask slipped. "You really don't remember me, do you?" Before she could ask what he meant, he spurred his horse forward, racing down the slope toward the melee below. Jane followed, rifle ready, plunging into chaos without understanding why every fiber of her being told her this was exactly where she belonged. The Cooper gang saw them coming too late to mount a proper defense. Chase rode like a man possessed, answering gunfire with methodical precision. Jane found herself moving with a fluidity that transcended her memory, positioning, aiming, firing in a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. They hit the gang's left flank just as the prospectors mounted a desperate charge from behind there. Overturned wagons. Caught between 2 fires, the Coopers broke and ran, leaving 3 of their number in the dirt. Chase reloaded while scanning for new threats. "You fight like someone who's done this before." "I don't remember learning how." Some things go deeper than memory. He dismounted, helped an injured prospector to cover. Some things are in the bone. As the immediate danger passed, Jane heard the sound she'd been dreading. Hoofbeats on the trail above. Their pursuers had finally caught up. "Time to go," Chase said grimly. But the prospectors had surrounded them. An older man with silver hair and kind eyes stepped forward. "Name's Patterson. You folks just saved our lives. You're welcome to anything we have." "Appreciate it," Chase replied. "But we brought trouble with us. Best if we move on." "What kind of trouble?" The answer came in the form of gunfire from the ridge. 3 more figures had appeared, dismounting and taking cover. Professional shooters, Jane realized, the same men who'd been hunting them since Copper Falls. "The kind that gets good people killed," Chase said. "Patterson, get your people to cover. This isn't your fight." "Hell it isn't," Patterson replied, surprisingly fierce. "Any friend of folks who'd risk their necks for strangers is a friend of ours." Jane felt a strange sensation, like puzzle pieces trying to fit together in her mind. The way Patterson stood his ground, the loyalty of the prospectors, the sense of community under fire, it all felt hauntingly familiar. Catherine always said, "Community was the foundation of justice," she murmured, not realizing she'd spoken aloud. Chase went very still. "What did you say?" I don't know." The words just came out. Those were her exact words, from a speech she gave at the territorial capital. His eyes searched her face desperately. "It's starting to come back." Before Jane could process this, bullets began flying in earnest. Their pursuers had found good positions and were methodically targeting anyone who moved. The prospectors, armed but not professional fighters, quickly found themselves pinned down. "We need to end this fast," Chase said, "before someone gets killed who doesn't deserve it." Jane found herself nodding. "I'll take the left position, you circle right. Drive them together, then—" She stopped, surprised by her own tactical thinking. "Then pick them off in the center," Chase finished, wonder in his voice. "That's exactly what you would have said 7 years ago." They moved like they'd done this dance 100 times before. Jane flowed from cover to cover, laying down suppressing fire while Chase maneuvered. The familiarity was unsettling and comforting at once, like remembering a song whose words you'd forgotten. The fight was over in minutes. Caught between two experienced shooters and angry prospectors, their pursuers were quickly neutralized. 2 dead, 1 wounded and captured. As the gun smoke cleared, Jane found herself standing over one of the bodies. Something about the man's face nagged at her, a sense of recognition that had nothing to do with the chase that had brought them here. "I know him," she said slowly. "Not from today, from before." Chase knelt beside the corpse, searching pockets. "Name's Malloy. Worked for Territorial Judge Henry Thornton." The name hit Jane like a physical blow. Images flashed through her mind. A man in judicial robes, a gavel falling, herself at a witness stand, fear and determination warring in her chest. "Thornton," she whispered. "Oh, God." Memories were surfacing like drowning bodies, fragmented, but undeniable. A courthouse, documents hidden in a false bottom of a trunk, men in expensive suits making threats. Her father's angry voice, "Tell them nothing, Catherine, nothing." She grabbed Chase's arm. "Thornton, Judge Thornton was the one. He's the one who—" The words stuck in her throat as more memories crashed over her. "Easy," Chase said gently. "Let it come natural." "No, you don't understand." Jane's voice was urgent. "If Malloy was Thornton's man and they were hunting me, it means they know you're remembering," Chase finished grimly. "And they can't allow that." Patterson approached with the captured pursuer, a man bleeding from a shoulder, wound but alert and defiant. "Found these on him," Patterson said, handing Chase a telegram and a small leather notebook. Chase read the telegram, his face growing darker. He passed it to Jane. The message was brief. "Containment failed. Belmont remembering. Terminate immediately. Thornton." Jane felt ice in her veins. "They were never here to capture me. They were here to kill me." "Read the notebook," Chase said quietly. She flipped through pages of what appeared to be a ledger, names, dates, amounts. As she read, her recovered memories began fitting the pieces together. These weren't random numbers. They were bribes, payoffs, a detailed record of corruption that reached from local magistrates to territorial governors. "This is evidence," she breathed. "Evidence of everything I was going to testify about." "And Malloy was keeping records," Chase observed. "Insurance, probably, or blackmail." The wounded man laughed bitterly. "You think that's all of it? You think Thornton's the top?" He spat blood. "Lady, you don't remember the half of what you—" "Knew." Jane knelt beside him. "Then tell me. Go to hell." Chase drew his gun, pressed it to the man's wounded shoulder. "Tell her, or I start making new holes." The man's face went white, but he shook his head. "You'll kill me anyway." "Maybe, but I'll do it clean instead of leaving you to bleed out slow." After a moment, the man nodded resignedly. "There's a warehouse in Deadwood, number 43 River Street. What you're looking for, what you knew before they scrambled your brains, it's all there." "What kind of warehouse?" Jane asked. "The kind where they store things they don't want found. Documents, evidence, people who've outlived their usefulness." Chase and Jane exchanged glances. "People, witnesses who won't testify any other way, folks who've seen too much and know too little." The man's smile was ugly. "Your daddy's still alive, if you're wondering." Jane's world tilted. Her father, Judge Ezekiel Belmont, was alive. "That's impossible. They said he died of a heart attack." "They say a lot of things, doesn't make them true." Chase stood abruptly. "Patterson, can you handle the prisoner?" "Consider it done. Where you folks headed?" "Deadwood," Jane said, without hesitation. "I have a father to find and a mystery to solve. And probably more people trying to kill us," Chase added. Jane climbed onto the black gelding behind Chase, her mind reeling with returned memories and new information. As they rode away from the prospector camp, she pressed her face against Chase's coat, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and gunpowder. "Wait. Familiar?" "Chase," she said slowly. "Before, when I almost remembered something about Catherine's words on community and justice." "Yeah?" "You seemed surprised I knew them, but not surprised I would think them." He was quiet for a long moment. "There's a lot we need to talk about. Like how you really knew Catherine Belmont, like how I was supposed to marry her." Jane's grip on his coat tightened. "What?" "The night before her testimony, we were planning to leave together, start fresh somewhere her father's enemies couldn't reach. I was waiting for her at a hotel in the capital." His voice went rough. "She never came." The pieces of the puzzle were becoming clearer, but the picture they formed was more complex than she'd imagined. She wasn't just Catherine Belmont, disappeared witness. She was Catherine Belmont, woman in love, daughter of a judge who'd apparently died but hadn't, possessor of evidence that could topple governments. "So, when you found me," she said carefully, "it wasn't just about completing a job." "No, it wasn't." As they rode toward Deadwood and whatever revelations awaited them there, Jane, Catherine, felt the weight of her recovered identity settling on her shoulders. With memory came responsibility, with understanding came danger, and with the truth came a choice. She could run, disappear again, let Samuel Chase face the consequences of stirring up old ghosts. Or she could become Catherine Belmont again, fully and completely, and finish what she'd started 7 years ago. The locket around her neck seemed to pulse with warmth, and she thought she felt the crack in its surface widening, as if whatever was inside was ready to be revealed at last. "Chase," she said as the trail wound down toward the valley floor, "when we get to Deadwood, when we find what's in that warehouse—" "Yeah? I want to open the locket." He turned in the saddle to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that might have been hope. "You sure about that?" "No," she admitted, "but Catherine Belmont would be, and I think it's time I started remembering who she really was." Above them, storm clouds gathered over the peaks, and in the distance, the lights of Deadwood flickered like fallen stars. The most dangerous part of their journey was just beginning. But for the first time since waking with no memories in a doctor's office 3 months ago, Jane felt like she was heading toward answers rather than running from questions. The truth, whatever it was, lay ahead. The town of Deadwood clung to the mountains like a parasite, fed by gold and watered with blood. As they descended through the narrow canyon that served as the town's only proper entrance, Catherine could smell the desperation before she could see it. Unwashed bodies, rotting wood, and the metallic tang of violence that never quite washed away. 3 days had passed since the fight at the prospector camp. 3 days of hard riding, sleeping under stars, and Chase slowly helping her piece together fragments of her stolen life. With each recovered memory came both relief and horror. Relief that she wasn't losing her mind. Horror at what someone had been willing to do to silence her. There, Chase pointed toward a collection of wooden buildings sprawled along a muddy creek. River Street's on the far side, where the mine offices are. Catherine adjusted her grip on the reins of her own horse, a tough little mare Chase had traded for at the last settlement they'd passed. She'd remembered how to ride, just like she'd remembered how to fight. Some skills, Chase had observed, went bone deep. "Tell me again what you remember about the warehouse," Chase said as they maneuvered down the switchback trail. "Not much." Catherine closed her eyes, reaching for the fragments. "I was supposed to meet someone there, someone who had information about the federal contracts. Judge Thornton was involved, but he wasn't the mastermind." "And your father?" "Papa was getting close to exposing everything. That's why they—" She stopped, struck by a sudden memory so vivid it nearly knocked her from the saddle. Her father's voice, urgent but steady. "Catherine, listen carefully. If anything happens to me, if they succeed in silencing me, there's a safety deposit box at Miners Bank in Deadwood. Box 247. Tell them the password is Justice Deferred. Inside, you'll find everything we need." "Chase," she breathed. "We need to go to the bank first." She explained the memory, watching his face change as she spoke. "That's new," he said. "You never mentioned a safety deposit box before." "I didn't remember it before." Catherine felt the familiar frustration of partial memories. "It's like someone took a painting and cut it into pieces, then randomly handed some back. I keep finding new pieces, but I can't see the whole picture." They reached the bottom of the canyon as afternoon shadows began stretching across the street. Deadwood was every bit as rough as its reputation suggested. Men with desperate eyes watched from alley mouths. Saloons promised comfort and delivered violence. The few women visible hurried with their heads down, avoiding eye contact. Miners Bank stood on the corner of Main and Gold Street, a solid brick. Building that looked almost respectable among the ramshackle structures surrounding it. A sign advertised secure deposits and gold assaying. "I'll go in alone," Catherine decided as they tied their horses, less conspicuous. Chase caught her arm. "Catherine, these people tried to erase your mind once. They won't hesitate to put a bullet in you if they recognize you." "Then it's a good thing I don't look like Catherine Belmont anymore." She gestured to her trail-worn clothes, her sun-darkened face, the way hardship had changed her. 3 months of living rough have their advantages. Inside the bank, Catherine approached the teller's cage with as much confidence as she could muster. The clerk, a thin man with ink-stained fingers, looked up with professional courtesy. "I'd like to access a safety deposit box," she said. "Box 247. "Of course, miss. I'll need identification and the password." Catherine's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. "Justice Deferred." The clerk's pen froze above his ledger. He looked up at her with new interest. "One moment, please." He disappeared through a door behind the counter. Catherine counted her heartbeats, each one feeling like an hour. Through the bank's front window, she could see Chase positioned where he had a clear view of both entrances. The clerk returned with an older man, well-dressed and nervous. "Miss," the older man said carefully, "I'm Mr. Brennan, the bank president. That particular box has been inactive for some time. I understand. May I ask how you came to know the password?" Catherine met his eyes steadily. "My father left it for me." Something shifted in Brennan's expression. "Your father? Judge Ezekiel Belmont?" The color drained from Brennan's face. "That's impossible. Judge Belmont is dead. Has been for 7 years. "Has he?" Catherine let the question hang between them. Or is that just what people were told? Brennan glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. Miss, I don't know who you are, but if you're claiming to be Catherine Belmont, you're playing a very dangerous game. I'm not playing anything. Catherine Belmont disappeared 7 years ago. There were inquiries, investigations, rewards posted. Many people looked for her, and all of them failed. Catherine pulled out the locket, let him see it clearly, or were told to look in the wrong places. Brennan stared at the locket, and she saw recognition dawn in his eyes. You need to come with me, now. He led her through the door behind the counter, down a narrow hallway to a small private office. Once inside, he locked the door and turned to her with an expression of mixed fear and amazement. I helped Judge Belmont set up that box, he said quietly. He was very specific about the instructions. Said his daughter would come for it someday, and that when she did, I was to give her a message. Catherine waited, hardly breathing. He said to tell you that the answers you seek are in 2 places. The box contains documents, evidence of the conspiracy, but the real proof, the kind that will bring down the whole network, is hidden at the warehouse. He said you'd know which one when the time came. And my father? The wounded man we captured said he was still alive. Brennan's face was grim. Judge Belmont was a good man, an honest man. In this territory, that's often a death sentence. He paused. But I've heard whispers, rumors. They say some prisoners are kept at the warehouse, people who know too much to kill, but too little to trust. Catherine felt hope and fear war in her chest. Take me to the box. The safety deposit room was in the bank's basement, behind a heavy steel door. Brennan used 2 keys, his and one he retrieved from a locked drawer, to open box 247. Inside, Catherine found a thick packet of documents wrapped in oilcloth. Her father's careful handwriting covered page after page, financial records, correspondence, detailed notes about meetings and transactions. As she read, the scope of the conspiracy became clear. Judge Thornton hadn't been the mastermind, he'd been a junior partner. The real powers were a group of Eastern investors who'd been systematically looting territorial resources for a decade. They owned mines they claimed were played out, sold them to settlers, then used legal manipulation to force the families off when the mines proved valuable again. They controlled shipping, banking, and most of the territorial court system. And, at the center of it all was a name that made Catherine's blood run cold. Blackwood Enterprises, owned by one Marcus Blackwood, United States Senator. This is why they tried to destroy me, she breathed. Papa had everything, names, dates, amounts. This would have brought down half the territorial government and reached all the way to Washington. But there was more. The final document was a map, hand-drawn but detailed, showing the layout of a warehouse compound. Her father had marked specific buildings, documents, prisoners, Blackwood's office, and at the bottom, in urgent script, Catherine, if you're reading this, trust no one in authority. The corruption goes higher than you know. Esther C. is trustworthy. Take him with you. Papa S.C. Samuel Chase. Her father had known about Chase, had trusted him. The realization hit her like lightning. Mr. Brennan, she said, as she rewrapped the documents. That night 7 years ago, before I disappeared. Do you know what happened? He hesitated. There were reports you were seen at the hotel with a man, a bounty hunter, then you vanished. Some thought he'd taken you, might have collected a private bounty. And you? What did you think? I thought Judge Belmont wouldn't have trusted the man if he meant his daughter harm. And I thought the timing was convenient, you disappearing the night before your testimony. Catherine tucked the documents inside her coat. One more question. The warehouse. Do you know which one? Brennan nodded grimly. Everyone in Deadwood knows which warehouse. Number 43 River Street. Blackwood's storage facility. No one goes there if they can help it. Too many people go in and don't come out. Catherine climbed the stairs from the vault, her mind racing. As she reached the main floor, Brennan caught her arm. "Miss Belmont, if that's truly who you are, be
careful.
The people you're dealing with have unlimited resources and no scruples. They've killed judges, threatened families, corrupted entire regions." "They stole my life," Catherine replied simply. "That alone would be enough. But if my father is still alive, if he's being held prisoner—" She trailed off, letting the implication hang. "Then you'll do whatever it takes to free him," Brennan finished, "just like he did for you." Catherine left the bank feeling like the world had shifted around her. Chase was waiting by the horses, his posture casual but alert. She could see him cataloguing every face on the street, every potential threat. "Learn anything useful?" he asked as she approached. "More than I expected." She lowered her voice. "Chase, my father mentioned you specifically in his notes, said you were trustworthy, that I should take you with me." Chase went very still. "He what?" "You knew him better than you've admitted, didn't you?" For a long moment, Chase didn't answer. Then, "We need to talk. Somewhere private." They rode through Deadwood's chaotic streets until they found a small livery stable on the outskirts. Chase paid the owner to let them use a private stall, claiming his horse had thrown a shoe. Once they were alone among the hay bales and horse tack, he turned to her. "Your father hired me 7 years ago," he said without preamble. "Not officially, privately. He suspected there was a plan to move against you before your testimony, and he wanted someone watching your back." Catherine sank onto a hay bale, stunned. "You were working for him? All this time?" "He paid me to find you if you disappeared, to keep you safe, to help you remember when the time was right." Chase's expression was anguished. "I failed him, Catherine. The night you vanished, I was supposed to be watching the hotel. Instead, I was—" He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. "I was drinking, feeling sorry for myself because I thought you were going to marry a judge's son. When I got back, you were gone." "You loved her," Catherine said softly. "Me. You loved me." "I did. I do." He met her eyes. "Your father knew. He also knew I was the only person he could trust. Completely, because I had the most to lose if anything happened to you." Catherine stood, moved toward him. "Chase!" "Wait." He backed away, pain written across his features. "You need to know the rest. After you disappeared, I spent years tracking every lead, following every rumor. I found evidence that Blackwood's people had been working on new ways, too, to control people who wouldn't cooperate. Control them how? Medical procedures, chemicals, techniques designed to destroy specific memories while leaving the person functional." His voice was hollow. "They didn't just hide you, Catherine. They experimented on you." The words hit her like physical blows. "That's why my memories are fragmented. Why some things are gone completely while others are intact." It wasn't random. It was targeted. They stripped away everything that made you Catherine Belmont, but left you capable of surviving, of functioning. Chase's fists clenched. "They turned you into a test subject." Catherine felt rage building inside her, clean and pure and powerful. "How many others? We won't know until we get into that warehouse, but based on what I've learned—" He shook his head. "There could be dozens." She pulled out the map her father had drawn, spread it on a feed barrel. "Then it's time we paid a visit to number 43 River Street." Chase studied the map. "Your father was very thorough. This shows guard positions, patrol routes, everything." He looked up at her. "Catherine, this is a fortress. We can't just walk in." "No, but we can't walk away either." She pointed to the building marked prisoners. "If my father is in, There, if other people are being held, experimented on, she broke off, overwhelmed by the thought. I know. Chase's voice was gentle. I know, and we'll get them out, but we need a plan. Rushing in will just get us all killed. Catherine nodded, forcing herself to think tactically. What do we know about their operation? Guards, security, schedules. Blackwood keeps a small army here, 20 men minimum, all professionals. They rotate shifts, patrol the perimeter. The warehouse compound covers 3 acres, most of it behind high walls. He traced the map with his finger. Your father's intelligence is good, but it's 7 years old. Things will have changed. Then we need current information. That means getting closer, observing their patterns, and that means getting past the river road checkpoints, Catherine finished. I know. I've been thinking about that. She stood, paced the small stall. The locket felt heavy against her chest, reminding her of all the questions still unanswered. Chase, there's something else, something I didn't put in the map. She told him about the crack in the locket, about feeling there was something inside, trying to get out. What if it's not just a photograph? What if it's something more important? Chase considered this. Your father was careful about everything else. If he meant for you to have the locket, if he knew it contained something crucial, then maybe it's time I found out what. They worked together, Chase using his knife with infinite care, to widen the crack without damaging whatever was inside. As the gap increased, they could see it wasn't just a photograph. There were papers, thin and folded, wrapped around a small object that glinted golden. Hold it steady, Chase murmured, using the tip of his blade to extract the contents. The papers unfurled to reveal a list written in her father's hand, names, dates, and locations. But these weren't the same names as in the bank documents. These were people, witnesses, survivors, prisoners. And there, halfway down the list, Catherine Belmont, location unknown, priority recovery. Below that, Ezekiel Belmont, Warehouse 43, Building C, Cell 7, alive as of March 1882. Catherine's hands shook as she read her father's name. Alive. The wounded man had been telling the truth. But it was the small golden object that made them both go still. A key, delicate, ornate, with the number 7 etched into its surface. A cell key, Chase breathed. Your father gave you the key to his own prison. Catherine closed her fist around the key, feeling its weight and warmth. He knew. Somehow, someway, he knew I'd survive, I'd remember, I'd come for him. Catherine! Chase's voice was warning. No. She stood, energy coursing through her like electricity. Don't you see? This isn't just about exposing corruption anymore. This isn't just about justice. My father, other innocents, are being held in that place. Experimented on, maybe tortured. She grabbed the map, studied it with new intensity. We're not just gathering evidence anymore, Chase. We're mounting a rescue operation. With 2 people against 20, against a fortress. With determination, against corruption. With truth against lies, with love against profit. Catherine met his eyes. You said you loved the woman I was. Well, this is who I am. The question is, are you with me? Chase was quiet for a long moment. Then he drew his gun, checked the cylinder, and holstered it again. Your father hired me to keep you safe. But you're right. We can't keep anyone safe while that place exists. They spent the next hour going over the map in detail. Planning. Approach routes, identifying weak points in the warehouse defenses. As they worked, Catherine felt more memories surfacing, not just personal memories, but tactical knowledge. Her father had trained her, she realized, not just in law and evidence, but in survival. The loading docks, she said suddenly, pointing to the map. They'll have regular deliveries. If we could get inside a delivery wagon. Risky, Chase observed. If they search it, we're trapped. Everything's risky. Catherine folded the map carefully. But doing nothing isn't an option. They were interrupted by commotion outside the livery stable. Shouting, running footsteps, the sound of horses moving fast. Chase cautiously opened the stall door and peered out. "Problem," he said grimly. "Looks like someone recognized one of us." Through the stable doors, Catherine could see men in the street, not townspeople. These had the bearing of professional fighters, and they were moving with purpose toward the livery. "Back exit?" she asked. "Don't think so." Chase checked his weapons. "We might have to fight our way out." Catherine felt the familiar calm descend on her, the strange peace that came with action. How many? 8, maybe 10, all armed. "Good odds," she said, surprising herself. Chase looked at her strangely. "Most people wouldn't consider those good odds." "Most people aren't Catherine Belmont." They moved to cover, using stalls and equipment to shield themselves. The stable owner had vanished, wisely, at the first sign of trouble. Catherine could hear the men outside organizing, preparing. "Belmont," a voice called. "We know you're in there. Come out peaceful, and maybe you live to see morning." Catherine almost laughed. "Peaceful? After what you people did to me?" "You don't understand the situation, lady. Mr. Blackwood's got resources, got connections. You keep poking around, you're going to find yourself wishing you stayed lost." "Tell Mr. Blackwood," Catherine called back, "that Catherine Belmont is done being lost, and she's coming for everything you people stole." The response was immediate gunfire. Wood splintered around them as bullets punched through the stable walls. Chase returned fire, methodical and accurate, while Catherine maneuvered to a better position. "We can't stay here," Chase shouted over the gunfire. "They'll burn us out." Catherine spotted a hayloft ladder. "Up there. Better angles. Harder to hit." They climbed quickly, Catherine moving with an agility that surprised her. From the loft, they could see the entire stable and part of the street. The attackers were spreading out, trying to surround the building. "Still think these are good odds?" Chase asked, as he took aim on a man creeping toward the stable doors. Catherine smiled, and there was something fierce in it, getting better all the time. She'd found a rifle among the stable equipment, an old Henry repeater, well-maintained. As she checked the action, she discovered she knew exactly how to optimize its accuracy, how to compensate for distance and wind. The fight was brief but intense. Catherine and Chase had the advantage of position and preparation. Their attackers had numbers, but were operating on incomplete information about their target's capabilities. When the gunsmoke cleared, 5 men were down, 3 more wounded and retreating. The remainder had vanished into Deadwood's maze of alleys. "They'll be back," Chase observed, reloading, "with more men. Then we better not be here." They gathered their gear and prepared to leave. As they climbed down from the loft, Catherine noticed something glinting in the hay. A badge, Federal Marshal's badge. "Chase," she called, "look at this." He examined the badge, his expression darkening. "This is Special Task Force, Federal Anti-Corruption Unit, established 2 years ago specifically to investigate territorial irregularities. One of the men we shot was federal law enforcement. Either that, or someone's impersonating federal agents." Catherine felt pieces clicking into place. What if it's both? What if the corruption goes all the way to Washington? What if Blackwood's people have infiltrated federal law enforcement? Chase pocketed the badge. "Then we're not just fighting local corruption. We're fighting a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of government." As they prepared to leave the stable, Catherine looked back at the bodies of the men who'd tried to kill them. Professional fighters, well-equipped, well-coordinated, and at least one had carried federal credentials. "Chase," she said quietly, "when we hit that warehouse, we're not just rescuing prisoners. We're not just gathering evidence. What are we doing?" Catherine touched the golden key through her shirt, feeling its promise and its weight. "We're starting a war." They slipped out of the livery as sirens began wailing in the distance. Deadwood's law enforcement was finally responding, but Catherine suspected many of them were already compromised. "Trust no one in authority," her father had written. The words had never felt more relevant. As they mounted their horses and rode toward the outskirts of town, Catherine felt the familiar weight of decision settling on her shoulders. But this time, it felt different. This time, she wasn't just Catherine Belmont, victim of a conspiracy. She was Catherine Belmont, daughter of a judge, woman with a mission, and fighter with nothing left to lose. The warehouse district lay ahead, shrouded in industrial smoke and darkness. Somewhere in those buildings, her father waited. Somewhere in those cells, other victims counted the hours of their imprisonment. Catherine touched the locket one more time, then secured it beneath her shirt. The proof was gathered. The allies were chosen. The plan was forming. It was time for Catherine Belmont to come home. The most dangerous part of her journey was just beginning. Warehouse District 43 sprawled across the industrial section of Deadwood like a cancer, its high walls and guard towers silhouetted against the evening sky. Catherine and Chase approached from the east, using an abandoned mine shaft as their observation post. From here, 300 yards away, they could see the compound in detail. "Your father's intelligence was better than we thought," Chase murmured, studying the layout through a brass telescope. "Guard positions are almost exactly where he marked them." Catherine lay beside him on the rocky outcrop, watching the methodical patrol patterns. 2 guards at each corner tower, rotating every 2 hours, sentries walking the perimeter wall. Dogs, German shepherds from the look of them, patrolling with handlers. "There." She pointed to a section where the wall was lower, damaged by what looked like an old explosion. "That's our best entry point. Still 15 feet high, with razor wire on top. Better than 20 feet and no damage to exploit." Catherine pulled out a piece of charcoal and sketched on a flat stone. "We wait for the 4:30 patrol to pass. That gives us a 40-minute window before the next check." Chase lowered the telescope. "Catherine, you know this is likely a one-way trip. Even if we get in, even if we find the prisoners, my father's in there." Her voice carried a finality that ended the discussion. "And if what we suspect is true, there are others. People who've been erased, experimented on, tortured. We're the only ones who know they exist. And if it's a trap? If they're expecting us?" Catherine smiled grimly. "Then we give them more trouble than they bargained for." They spent the remaining hours until nightfall, finalizing their plan. Catherine drew detailed maps in the dirt, memorizing every building, every potential escape route. Chase prepared their equipment, ropes, tools for cutting wire, medical supplies in case they found injured prisoners. As full darkness settled over the compound, they moved. The abandoned mine provided perfect concealment for their approach. Catherine felt her pulse steady as they drew closer to the walls. This was different from the random encounters they'd faced so far. This was intentional, planned, purposeful. "You ready?" Chase whispered as they reached the shadow of the wall. Catherine checked her weapons one final time. The familiar weight of her gun, the reassuring presence of her knife. And around her, neck, the locket with its precious cargo, the photographs, the list, and most importantly, the golden key. "I've been ready for 7 years, she replied. "I just didn't know it." The damaged section of wall proved even more promising up close. The explosion, whether accidental or sabotage, had created handholds in the stone. Chase went first, testing each grip, securing a rope for Catherine to follow. They dropped silently into a narrow alley between warehouses. The air smelled of machine oil and human misery. In the distance, Catherine could hear voices, guards talking, the jingle of keys, the occasional bark of a dog. Building C was 3. Structures to the north, according to the map. They moved through shadows, avoiding the pools of light from strategically placed lamps. Catherine found herself remembering fragments, not just memories, but skills, how to move silently, how to read shadows, how to become invisible in plain sight. There, Chase pointed to a brick building with barred windows, a sign painted on. The wall read, "Storage C," but Catherine could see the lie immediately. No storage building needed bars on every window. They circled the building, looking for the best entry point. Catherine noticed something Chase missed, a ventilation grate, near the foundation, just large enough for a person. But more importantly, she noticed the sounds coming from it, faint but unmistakable, human voices. "They're down there," she whispered. "In the basement." Chase examined the grate, locked from the inside. "We'll have to find another way." Catherine was already studying the building structure. The loading dock. There's a freight elevator that goes to the basement level. We get in there, we can access the cells from inside. The loading dock was a calculated risk, more exposed, but also less guarded. No one expected infiltrators to use the most obvious entrance. They waited for the next patrol to pass, then sprinted across the open ground. The freight elevator was exactly where the map indicated. Catherine worked on the lock while Chase watched for guards. The tumblers fell with surprising ease. She hadn't lost her lock-picking skills with her memories. The elevator descended with agonizing slowness. Catherine felt her heart hammering as they descended into the belly of the building. The air grew thicker, laden with the smell of unwashed humanity and something else. Chemicals. Medical compounds. The basement was a study in organized horror. Cells lined both sides of a central corridor, each with a small barred window at eye level. Dim electric bulbs provided just enough light to see. And in those cells... Catherine gasped. The first cell held a woman, perhaps 40, sitting motionless on a narrow cot. Her eyes were open but vacant, staring at nothing. The second held a man who rocked back and forth, muttering to himself. "Memory extraction," Chase said grimly. "Look at their eyes. They've had their minds destroyed." Catherine's rage was a living thing inside her chest. These weren't prisoners. They were victims of medical experimentation, people whose only crime had been knowing too much, seeing too much, remembering too much. Cell 7 was halfway down the corridor. Catherine's hand shook as she fitted the golden key into the lock. The tumblers clicked, and the door swung open with a soft creak. Inside, sitting on a cot with his back to the wall, was a man she almost didn't recognize. 7 years of imprisonment had aged Ezekiel Belmont terribly. His hair was white, his face gaunt, his once powerful frame reduced to skin and bone. But his eyes were clear and alert and undimmed. "Papa," Catherine whispered. He looked up, and for a moment confusion flickered across his features. Then recognition dawned, followed immediately by fear. "Catherine, but you can't be!" He struggled to stand. "My God, child, what have they done to you?" She fell to her knees beside him, tears streaming down her face. "Papa, we've come to get you out." "We?" His eyes found Chase standing guard in the doorway. "Samuel, you found her." "Like I promised, Judge." Ezekiel gripped Catherine's hands, studying her face. Do you remember what they stole from you?" "Most of it." "Enough." Catherine helped him to his feet. "Papa, we have evidence. Documents, photographs, records, we can bring them down." "No!" His voice was urgent. "You don't understand. The evidence isn't enough anymore. They've evolved, adapted. Blackwood isn't just stealing territories now. He's building something larger." Chase stepped further into the cell. "Judge, we need to move. Patrols come through here." "Wait!" Ezekiel grabbed Catherine's arm. "There's something you need to know. Something I discovered while I've been here. Blackwood isn't working alone. He's part of a larger network." Federal senators, railroad barons, mining magnates. They're planning something called the consolidation. Catherine felt ice in her veins. What's the consolidation? A complete takeover of territorial governance. They're going to manufacture a crisis, Indian raids, mining accidents, economic collapse, then step in as saviors, install their own government, their own laws, their own currency. When? Soon. Weeks, maybe days. Ezekiel's eyes were fierce despite his weakened condition. That's why they've been moving so aggressively. They can't afford any witnesses, any evidence, any opposition. Chase checked his watch. Judge, we've got maybe 20 minutes before the next patrol. We need to get everyone out of here who can be moved. Catherine stood, decision crystallizing. Not everyone, not yet. Papa, how many prisoners are here? How many are functional? Out of 37 cells, maybe a dozen still have their minds intact. The others. He shook his head sadly. They used them to perfect the memory extraction techniques. Then we save who we can and expose the rest. Catherine's voice carried new authority. Chase, can you get Papa and any mobile prisoners to the horses? What about you? I'm going upstairs. She pulled out the documents from the bank, the evidence they'd gathered. It's time Blackwood and I had a conversation. Chase grabbed her arm. Catherine, that's suicide. No, suicide would be letting the consolidation proceed, letting them destroy more lives, more communities, more families. She met his eyes, and he saw something new there, not just determination, but a kind of terrible clarity. I'm Catherine Belmont, daughter of Judge Ezekiel Belmont, and I'm going to end this. Ezekiel smiled for the first time in 7 years. That's my daughter. They moved quickly. Chase and Ezekiel began rousing the conscious prisoners, helping them prepare for escape. Catherine kissed her father's forehead, squeezed Chase's hand, then headed for the freight elevator. The upper floors of Building C were a different world. Entirely, carpeted hallways, electric lighting, the smell of expensive tobacco and leather. Catherine moved like smoke through the corridors, guided by instinct and fragments of recovered memory. She found what she was looking for behind a door marked Private Office. The room was opulent, mahogany desk, crystal decanters, oil paintings of men in expensive suits, and seated behind the desk, reviewing papers by lamplight, was a man she recognized from wanted posters and newspaper photographs. Marcus Blackwood, senator and architect of territorial corruption. He looked up as she entered, not surprised so much as resigned. Miss Belmont, I wondered when you'd find your way here. Catherine kept her gun trained on him. Senator Blackwood, please sit. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. We have much to discuss. We have nothing to discuss. On the contrary, we have everything to discuss. Blackwood poured himself a brandy with steady hands. You see, my dear, you've become quite the problem. Catherine remained standing. Good. 7 years ago, you had evidence that could have caused difficulties, but evidence can be suppressed, witnesses can be discredited or purchased. He sipped his brandy thoughtfully, but you've evolved beyond that. You've become a symbol, a story, the woman who came back from the dead to expose corruption. And that scares you. It concerns me. You see, the consolidation requires public confidence. The people need to believe we're saving them from chaos, not creating it. Blackwood set down his glass. Your existence contradicts that narrative. Catherine felt pieces clicking into place. The memory extraction. That wasn't just to silence me. It was a test. Very good. Blackwood smiled, and it was genuinely admiring. You were our proof of concept. If we could erase a brilliant lawyer's daughter, someone with strong family connections and documented evidence, then we could erase anyone. How many others? Dozens? Hundreds? He shrugged carelessly. Anyone who possessed inconvenient knowledge or asked uncomfortable questions. We perfected the techniques on prisoners, political dissidents, troublesome journalists. Catherine's gun hand trembled with rage. You've been turning people into vegetables, into empty shells. We've been solving problems efficiently. No messy trials, no inconvenient martyrs, no dangerous precedents. Memory extraction is clean, permanent, and untraceable. Except I remembered. For the first time, Blackwood looked genuinely puzzled. Yes, that has been unexpected. Our medical experts can't explain how your memories returned. Catherine touched the locket beneath her shirt. Maybe some things are stronger than your science. Perhaps. Blackwood stood, moved to the window overlooking the warehouse compound. But it doesn't matter now. The consolidation is too close to completion. One troublesome woman, even with her memories intact, can't stop the wheel of progress. Watch me, Blackwood laughed. My dear Miss Belmont, do you really think you can expose this conspiracy with a few documents and some sob stories? The very judges who would hear your case are on my payroll. The newspapers are owned by my associates. The territorial government exists at our sufferance. Then I'll take it to Washington. Washington? Blackwood's eyes glittered. I have 12 senators in my pocket and enough congressmen to block any investigation. The president himself owes his election to funds we provided. Catherine felt the magnitude of the conspiracy settling on her shoulders. Then I'll take it to the people. The people? Blackwood turned from the window. The people are sheep, Miss Belmont. They want safety, prosperity, order. We provide all three. In exchange, they give us their trust and their resources. They give you their freedom. Freedom is an illusion. Order is reality. Catherine had heard enough. It's over, Blackwood. I have evidence. I have witnesses. My father is still alive, and others know the truth. Your father. Blackwood's smile turned cold. Yes, we kept him alive. Useful for controlling you if you ever surfaced. And now you've played right into our hands. Catherine frowned. What are you talking about? Did you really think it was coincidence that you recovered your memories now? That you found your way here so easily? Blackwood returned to his desk, pulled out a photograph. Meet Dr. Friedrich Steinberg, late of Vienna, expert in memory manipulation and neural reconstruction. The photograph showed a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and intense eyes. Catherine stared at it, feeling something cold crawl down her spine. Dr. Steinberg pioneered the memory extraction process, but he also developed the recovery protocols. You see, Miss Belmont, we didn't just steal your memories. We programmed you. The room tilted. Catherine gripped the chair back for support. No. Oh, yes. Your quest for the truth, your growing skills, your tactical thinking, all carefully orchestrated. We've been guiding you here to this moment for months. Catherine's mind reeled. Why? Why would you want me to remember? Because, my dear, you're going to help us execute the consolidation. Blackwood pulled out another document, placed it on the desk between them. You see, we needed a heroine. Someone pure, someone wronged, someone the people would rally behind. He pushed the paper toward her. Tomorrow, you're going to give a speech to the territorial legislature. You'll detail the corruption you've uncovered, the experiments you've endured, the injustices you've witnessed. You'll call for immediate action. Catherine stared at the document. It was word for word the speech she'd been formulating in her mind. I would never. Oh, but you will. Because if you don't, your father dies, slowly, painfully, along with every prisoner in this facility. Blackwood's voice was conversational, as if discussing the weather. Dr. Steinberg's recovery. Protocols included certain compulsions, suggestions buried deep in your subconscious. Catherine felt something stirring in her mind, a pressure that hadn't been there before. You're lying. Am I? Tell me, Miss Belmont, do you remember exactly how you escaped Copper Falls that first night? Do you remember who really shot whom during that fight at the prospector camp? Images flashed through Catherine's mind, conflicting, confusing. Had she shot the Cooper gang member? Or had Chase? Had she really burned the mill? Or had someone else started that fire? You programmed me to be your weapon, she whispered. We programmed you to be our catalyst. You'll expose the corruption, yes. You'll demand justice. And when the territorial government proves too paralyzed to act, when the federal authorities show themselves to be compromised, the people will cry out for new leadership. And you'll provide it. We'll provide it. Clean, efficient corporate governance. No more territorial squabbling, no more federal bureaucracy. Just order, prosperity, and progress under the guidance of men who understand how the world really works. Catherine raised her gun, sighted down the barrel at Blackwood's heart. I won't let you use me. You don't have a choice. Blackwood smiled serenely. The compulsions are already activating. You feel it, don't you? The pressure in your mind? The growing certainty that you must give that speech? Catherine did feel it, a mounting urgency, a sense that speaking to the legislature was the only way forward. But was it her own determination, or Blackwood's programming? Fight it, she told herself. Think. But even as she fought the mental pressure, another realization struck her. If Blackwood was telling the truth about the programming, about her manipulation, what else had they altered? What other false memories had they implanted? Samuel Chase, she said suddenly, his role in this, his feelings for Catherine, were those real? Blackwood's smile widened. Now you're asking the right questions. The sound of gunfire erupted from outside. Blackwood moved casually to the window. Ah, it seems your friend Mr. Chase is attempting to rescue the prisoners. How heroic, how predictable. Catherine's heart hammered. Chase was fighting for their lives while she stood here paralyzed by revelations and manipulated memories. Let me make you an offer, Blackwood said, not turning from the window. Cooperate fully. Give the speech tomorrow. Help us implement the consolidation. In return, I'll ensure your father lives, the prisoners are released, and you retain your recovered memories. And if I refuse, then everyone dies. Your father, Chase, the prisoners, everyone except you. You'll live, but we'll extract your memories again. This time permanently. You'll become just another broken shell in just another cell. Catherine felt the weight of impossible choices. If she cooperated, Blackwood won. But people lived. If she refused, people died. But Blackwood still won. Unless... The gunfire outside was growing closer. Catherine could hear shouting, the whine of ricochets. Chase was fighting his way toward the building. You made one mistake, she said quietly. Blackwood turned from the window. Oh? You assumed your programming was perfect. Catherine smiled, and there was something dangerous in it. You assumed. I wouldn't figure out how to use it against you. The pressure in her mind, the compulsion to give the speech, suddenly shifted. Instead of fighting it, Catherine embraced it, channeled it, redirected it. You want me to expose corruption, to demand justice, to call out those who've abused their power. She stepped closer to the desk. Then let's start right here, right now. Blackwood's confidence flickered. Miss Belmont, Senator Blackwood, Catherine said, her voice carrying new authority. I hereby accuse you of treason, murder, conspiracy, and crimes against humanity. I formally demand that you surrender yourself to federal authorities. That's not the speech. The speech changes. Catherine felt power flowing through her, not Blackwood's programming, but her own will reclaimed. You see, Senator, you made another mistake. You told me the truth. The door burst open. Chase stumbled in, bloodied but alive, gun in hand. Behind him came Ezekiel Belmont, moving under his own power, and 3 other prisoners, freed witnesses. "Sorry I'm late," Chase said, seeing Blackwood and Catherine facing off across the desk. "Had to argue with some people about right-of-way." Blackwood reached for a gun in his desk drawer. Catherine shot him through the wrist. He screamed, fell back against the window. "Papa," Catherine said without taking her eyes off Blackwood, "are you strong enough to take testimony?" "For this?" Ezekiel Belmont straightened, and suddenly he looked every inch the judge he'd been. "I've been preparing for 7 years." Chase moved to secure Blackwood. "Catherine, the whole compound is going up. Fire in Building A, explosions in Building D, someone systematically destroying evidence. Then we save what we can and get. Everyone out." Catherine turned to her father. "Papa, Dr. Steinberg, is he here?" He was. May have escaped during the confusion. Catherine felt the compulsions and false memories she'd been fighting begin to settle. Not disappearing, she suspected they never fully would, but becoming manageable. Like background noise she could tune out. "It doesn't matter," she said. "We have enough. Blackwood himself, the prisoners he experiments on, the documents we've gathered." She picked up the speech Blackwood had prepared for her, scanned it, quickly. "And we have this, proof of their plan." Blackwood, cradling his wounded wrist, laughed bitterly. "You think this is over? You think stopping me stops anything? I'm one man in a much larger machine." "Then we'll stop the machine one, piece at a time." Catherine helped her father to the desk, where official territorial seal stamps waited. "Starting with justice." Chase checked the window. "We've got maybe an hour before federal marshals arrive, both friendly and unfriendly." Ezekiel was already writing, his hand steady despite years of captivity. "Catherine, I need you to state for the record everything you remember about your kidnapping, your memory extraction, and what you've learned since." As Catherine spoke, her father wrote with the speed and precision of a lifetime jurist. Chase and the other prisoners added their testimonies. Blackwood sat in sullen silence, watching his empire begin its collapse. Then Chase held up a hand. "Someone's coming. Multiple vehicles." Through the window, they could see army vehicles entering the compound. Not territorial militia, these were federal troops. "They can't be compromised," Catherine said with sudden certainty, "at least not all of them." A knock at the door. A voice, strong and authoritative. "This is General Morrison, United States Army. Anyone inside, identify yourselves." Catherine looked at Chase, at her father, at the evidence spread across the desk. Her choice was made. "General Morrison," she called out, "this is Catherine Belmont. We have Senator Blackwood under citizens. Arrest for treason and crimes against these territories." The door opened cautiously. A man in general's uniform entered, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. "Miss Belmont, we've been looking for you for quite some time." "General." Ezekiel stood, suddenly every inch the judge he'd always been. "I believe you'll find our evidence quite comprehensive." Catherine caught something in Morrison's expression. Relief. Vindication. "General, how did you know to come here?" Morrison smiled grimly. "Because, Miss Belmont, there are more good people in government than the corrupted elements would have you believe. We've been building our own case against the territorial conspiracy, but we needed proof. We needed witnesses." He gestured to his adjutant, who began collecting the documents. "When reports came in of gunfire at this facility, we mobilized immediately." Blackwood spoke for the first time since his capture. "You're too late, Morrison. The consolidation has already begun. Other facilities, other operations we know about and are simultaneously raiding," Morrison interrupted. "Senator, did you really think Washington was completely blind to your activities?" Catherine felt something shift inside her chest. Hope, real and sustainable for the first time in 7 years. "General, the prisoners here, the experiments. There are dozens of victims who've had their minds destroyed. We'll do everything we can for them. Morrison's expression was grim but determined, and we'll ensure those responsible face justice. As soldiers moved through the building, securing evidence and arresting conspirators, Catherine found herself on the warehouse roof with Chase. The compound was chaos below them. Fires, vehicles, shouting people, but it was the chaos of resolution, not destruction. "You did it," Chase said quietly. "You brought them down." Catherine touched the locket at her throat. "We did it. You, me, Papa, all the victims who survived. And now we rebuild." Catherine looked out over Deadwood, over the territories that had been scarred by corruption and greed. One person at a time, one community at a time, one truth at a time. Chase took her hand. Together. Catherine thought about programmed memories and manipulated feelings, about trust and betrayal, and the uncertain ground between truth and fiction. "I still don't know what's real," she admitted. "What I really remember versus what they made me think I remember. Then we'll figure it out together. Real memories, false ones. What matters is who you choose to be now." Catherine smiled, feeling lighter than she had in 7 years. "I choose to be Catherine Belmont. All of her, the good memories and the bad, the real and the implanted. All of it made me who I am right now." Below them, her father was giving orders with the authority of his restored position. Prisoners were being led to safety. Blackwood and his remaining associates were in custody. "You know this is just the beginning," Chase observed. "The investigation, the trials, rooting out all the conspirators." "Good," Catherine replied. "I've got time." She looked down at her hands, hands that had held weapons, picked locks, shot enemies, but also hands that had comforted prisoners and held evidence of truth, hands that could build as well as destroy. The locket caught the light from the burning warehouse. Catherine opened it, easily now, the catch fixed or perhaps just responding to the right touch. Inside was the photograph she'd glimpsed through the crack. A younger version of herself, standing with her father and a man she now recognized as Chase. In the picture, she was laughing, arms around both men, looking completely happy. Real memory or planted fiction? It didn't matter. The people in that photograph, those people were real now, in this moment, on this rooftop. "What's next?" Chase asked. Catherine closed the locket, tucked it safely away. "Next, we heal. We expose the rest of the conspiracy. We help the victims recover what they can of their lives." She paused, thinking. "And we make sure this never happens again. To anyone." The sun was beginning to rise over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. A new day, a new beginning. Catherine Belmont, daughter, fighter, survivor, truth finder, stood ready to face whatever came next. The woman, who had lost her name, her memory, and her hope, had found all three again. And she was just getting started. 6 weeks after the warehouse raid, Catherine stood before a packed congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C. The mahogany walls seemed to press in around her, heavy with the weight of power and secrets. Senators sat in tiered rows, their faces a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and barely concealed fear. General Morrison sat at the witness table beside her, along with her father, now fully recovered and serving as special prosecutor. The evidence was mountainous: documents, photographs, testimonies from dozens of victims. "Miss Belmont," Chairman Reynolds leaned forward, adjusting his spectacles, "you claim that a conspiracy involving federal officials, territorial judges, and mining interests systematically destroyed the memories of dozens of citizens. This is quite an extraordinary accusation." Catherine met his gaze steadily. "Extraordinary crimes require extraordinary justice, Senator." She stood, approached the evidence table. "This is Martha Collins, age 34, mother of 3. She discovered her husband was being cheated by mining companies. They destroyed her mind so completely she no longer recognizes her own children. Catherine placed another photograph on the table. Benjamin Torres, territorial surveyor. He found evidence of fraudulent land claims. They extracted 40 years of memories, leaving him with the mental capacity of a child. One by one, she presented the faces. Each photograph was a life destroyed, a family shattered, a truth stolen. The room grew quieter with each revelation. "These aren't statistics," Catherine said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "These aren't cases or files or legal abstractions. These are human beings whose only crime was knowing the truth." Senator Bradley, whom Catherine recognized from Blackwood's correspondence as a conspirator, shifted uncomfortably. "Miss Belmont, while these stories are tragic, we need more than emotional appeals. We need proof. Proof." Catherine's voice cut through the murmur. "General Morrison, would you please display Exhibit A47? Morrison wheeled forward a chalkboard covered with a complex organizational chart. Names connected by lines, money. Trails traced in red ink, a web of corruption that spanned 3 territories and reached into 14 states. "This is the Blackwood Network," Catherine explained. 57 confirmed members, including 5 senators, 12 territorial judges, 23 mining executives, and 17 federal agents. She turned to face Bradley directly. "Senator Bradley, you might recognize your name there. 3rd level down, connected to the miners' credit union fraud." The room erupted. Bradley shot to his feet. "This is outrageous. I demand, you demand." Catherine's laughter was sharp as breaking glass. "For 7 years, I had no name, no memory, no life because of your demands. These people," she gestured to the photographs, "have no minds left because of your demands." Chairman Reynolds banged his gavel. "Order! Order in the chamber!" Catherine walked back to the witness table, but she didn't sit. "Gentlemen, I'm not here to make accusations. I'm here to make a promise." The room went dead silent. "I promise you this. Every person responsible for these crimes will face justice. Every stolen memory will be accounted for. Every life destroyed will be remembered." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "And if this body chooses to protect the guilty rather than seek justice for the innocent, then I will take this evidence to every newspaper, every courthouse, every public square in America until the truth is heard." Senator Morrison, no relation to the general, stood. "Miss Belmont, are you threatening this committee? I'm offering it a choice." Catherine placed both hands on the table, leaning forward. "Justice or history's judgment, truth or complicity. There is no middle ground." The session recessed for private deliberation. Catherine stepped outside, where Chase waited in the hallway. He was dressed formally now, clean clothes, shaved face, the look of a man who'd found purpose. "How do you think it went?" he asked. Catherine smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed in days. "I think some powerful people are about to discover what powerlessness feels like." "Your father seems confident." They walked toward the window overlooking the Capitol grounds. Below, protesters held signs demanding justice for the victims of the memory extractions. News reporters interviewed survivors. The story had captured the nation's attention in a way Catherine hadn't expected. "Papa's spent his whole life believing in justice," Catherine said. "He never stopped believing, even in that cell." Chase reached for her hand. "Catherine, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been putting off." She turned to face him fully. Over the past weeks, as they'd prepared testimony and tracked down witnesses, their relationship had settled into something comfortable but undefined. The question of what was real between them remained unspoken but constant. "About the programming," Chase continued. "About what Blackwood told you regarding my feelings, it doesn't matter," Catherine interrupted. "It does matter. You need to know." "Chase," She took both his hands. Whatever Blackwood planted in my mind, whatever lies he told, whatever memories he twisted, none of that changes how I feel right now, in this moment, with you. Chase's eyes searched her face. And how do you feel? Before Catherine could answer, her father emerged from the hearing room. His expression was grim, but determined. They're demanding a full investigation, Ezekiel announced. Independent prosecutor, federal task force, emergency funding to locate and treat more victims. Catherine felt something inside her chest loosen, tension she'd been carrying for weeks. They're taking it seriously. Bradley and 12 others have invoked the Fifth Amendment. That tells us everything we need to know about their guilt. Ezekiel smiled, the expression transforming his gaunt face. Justice may move slowly, but it moves. Over the following months, the Belmont investigation, as the press dubbed it, became the largest corruption case in American history. Catherine found herself at the center of a movement she'd never intended to start. She returned to the territories, not as a victim, but as a crusader. Towns that had suffered under corrupt officials welcomed her like a liberating hero. The woman who'd had her memories stolen became the voice of the forgotten, the spokesman for the silenced. In Grand Junction, she stood on the courthouse steps where Judge Thornton had once pronounced corrupt verdicts. "Your voices matter," she told the crowd. "Your stories matter, your memories matter, and anyone who tries to steal them will answer. To all of us." In Cedar Ridge, now rebuilt with fair compensation from the mining companies, she met with families who'd lost land to fraudulent claims. "Taking back what's stolen isn't theft," she declared. "It's justice." But it was in a small town called Hope's Landing that Catherine made her most important discovery. Dr. Friedrich Steinberg had been found. The man who developed the memory extraction process was now himself a prisoner of it. General Morrison's forces had discovered him in a facility in Nevada, his own mind destroyed by his assistants who feared his knowledge. Catherine sat beside his bed in a federal medical facility, studying the face of the man who'd stolen so much from so many. He stared at the ceiling with vacant eyes, occasionally mumbling words in German. "Can he understand me?" she asked the attending physician. "We don't think so. The damage is extensive. Whoever did this to him was thorough." Catherine leaned forward. "Dr. Steinberg, my name is Catherine Belmont. You took my memories. You took my life. But I want you to know I got them back. No response, no recognition. I want you to know that every person you hurt has been found. Every victim is being cared for, and the process you created will never be used again. We're shutting down every facility, destroying every machine, eliminating every trace of your work." She stood, looking down at the broken man. "You thought memories could be controlled. You thought human consciousness was just data to be manipulated. You were wrong. Some things can't be stolen or destroyed. Some truths are stronger than any lie." As she turned to leave, she heard him whisper something. Catherine stopped, moved closer. "Was ist das?" Dr. Steinberg repeated. "What is this?" Catherine realized he was looking at his own hands, confusion and fear in his vacant eyes. "You're learning what your victims felt," she said quietly. "You're experiencing what you put them through." Justice came in many forms, Catherine reflected as she left the facility. Sometimes it was a court verdict, sometimes it was public exposure, and sometimes it was simply the universe ensuring that those who destroyed minds ended up broken themselves. 3 years after the warehouse raid, Catherine stood in a very different kind of building. The memorial to the forgotten was dedicated to all victims of memory extraction. Built on the site of Blackwood's former facility, it contained individual plaques for each victim, a research center dedicated to treating survivors, and a school where children learned the true history of the territories. The dedication ceremony brought together hundreds of survivors, families, officials, and supporters. Catherine was asked to speak, but when the moment came, she stepped aside. "This memorial isn't about one story," she said into the microphone. "It's about all the stories. I'd like to invite someone forward who can speak for all of us." An elderly woman approached the podium. Martha Collins, the mother whose memories had been stolen because she discovered mining fraud. Through intensive therapy and treatment, she'd recovered enough to remember her children's names. "I want to tell you about remembering," Martha began, her voice shaking but strong. "When they stole my memories, they thought they were silencing me. They thought they were protecting their secrets. But here's what they didn't understand. The heart remembers what the mind forgets." Catherine found herself crying as Martha spoke about rediscovering her children, about pieces of love and joy returning even when facts and dates remained lost. "We are not victims," Martha declared. "We are survivors. We are witnesses, and we are proof that the human spirit cannot be broken, cannot be stolen, cannot be destroyed." The crowd erupted in applause. Catherine felt Chase's hand slip into hers, felt her father's proud smile from the front row. They had built something beautiful from something horrible. After the ceremony, as the crowds dispersed, Catherine walked through the memorial garden with Chase and her father. Evening light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows on the peaceful paths. "It's not over," Catherine said, stopping by a fountain dedicated to those whose memories were too damaged to recover. "There are still people out there suffering from what was done to them, still corruption to root out." "It's never completely over," Ezekiel agreed. "Justice is ongoing work." Chase squeezed her hand. "But that doesn't mean we can't celebrate what we've accomplished." Catherine nodded, feeling the weight of the locket around her neck. She still wore it, but now it held different pictures, photos of survivors who'd reclaimed their lives, children who'd been reunited with parents, families who'd been made whole again. "You know what I realized?" Catherine said as they reached the garden center. "Blackwood was right about one thing. Memory is everything. Who we are, who we love, what we value, it all comes from what we remember." "But he was wrong about everything else," her father observed. "Yes," Catherine smiled. "He thought memories could be controlled like property. He didn't understand that they're living things. They grow, they change, they connect us to each other and to something larger than ourselves." A group of children ran past, playing tag among the memorial stones. Their laughter was bright and pure and full of hope. "I want to show you something," Catherine said, leading them to a particular section of the memorial. There, etched in stone, was a new kind of record, not just names and dates, but stories of recovery, of healing, of lives rebuilt. Sarah Chen, teacher, lost 15 years of memories, has now taught over 200 children. Robert Mills, father, forgot his family existed, now runs support groups for other victims. Elizabeth Grant, artist, lost all memory of her craft, now creates paintings that help others process trauma. "You see?" Catherine traced the words with her finger. "They didn't just survive, they transformed their pain into purpose." Chase read over her shoulder. "Like someone else I know." Catherine laughed. "I'm still figuring out who I am. Some days I feel like Catherine Belmont, daughter and fighter. Other days I feel like Jane Nobody who learned to be strong in the wilderness. Most days I'm both." "Maybe that's the point," Ezekiel suggested. "Maybe we're all more than one person. Maybe that's what makes us human, our ability to be multiple selves in one lifetime." As night fell, they made their way to the memorial's central feature, a flame that burned continuously, fueled by natural gas from the land that had once hidden so much corruption. Catherine pulled out a photograph she'd been carrying all day. It was from that first warehouse raid, showing her and Chase and her father standing together after the arrests. They all looked exhausted, injured, but victorious. "I've been thinking about that night," she said, "about the moment I realized who I really was. Not just recovered memories, but who I chose to become." She placed the photograph in a small cavity behind the flame, a place where visitors could leave mementos, messages, tokens of remembrance. "That moment changed everything, not because I remembered the past, but because I decided to create a future worth remembering." Chase moved beside her. "About what I was trying to tell you that day in Washington." "I know," Catherine interrupted gently. "I know your feelings were real. I know the programming tried to make me doubt everything, including you. But I also know that everything we've built together since then has been our choice." "And now?" Catherine turned to face him fully. "Now, I choose you. Not because of who we were 7 years ago, not despite the programming or memory manipulation. I choose you because of who we are right now, in this moment, with full knowledge of everything we've been through." Ezekiel smiled, stepped back to give them privacy, but Catherine caught his arm. "And I choose family," she said, including her father in her words. "Real family, chosen family, families we create and families we save." They stood together by the memorial flame as full darkness settled around them. The light danced and flickered, but it never went out. "What's next?" Chase asked. Catherine looked around at the memorial, at the trees where children had carved their names, at the path where so many survivors had walked toward healing. "Next, we keep building," she said. "We expand the treatment centers. We train more therapists. We help other families that have been torn apart by corruption." She paused, smiled. "And maybe we start a family of our own, one where every memory is cherished, every story is valued, every person knows they matter." Chase's eyes widened. "Catherine, are you saying—" "I'm saying I love you, Samuel Chase. I love who you were, who you are, and who we can become together. I'm saying I want to create new memories to treasure alongside the ones we fought so hard to reclaim." Her father beamed. "I'd say that calls for a celebration." As they walked back toward the memorial's main building, Catherine looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there were other victims still struggling to remember, other families still searching for stolen relatives, other communities still fighting corruption. But here now, in this place they'd built from the ashes of horror, there was hope, there was healing, there was proof that the human spirit could triumph over the darkest evils. Catherine Belmont, the woman who'd lost her name and found her purpose, smiled and walked forward into her future. She'd learned that memories weren't just about the past. They were about carrying the best of what was into the promise of what could be. The memorial flame burned behind them, a beacon in the darkness, a promise that no one would be forgotten, no story would be silenced, no memory would be lost without a fight. And in the years that followed, that promise would be kept. The woman, who began with no name, no memory, and no hope, had become someone who gave all three to others. She'd proven that even in the deepest darkness, the human spirit could not only survive, but transform pain into purpose, loss into love, and forgotten into unforgettable. Catherine's story would be told in schools, would inspire laws protecting victims of corruption, would give strength to others who'd lost their way. She'd become exactly what Blackwood had feared, not just a symbol of resistance, but a living example of resilience. The locket around her neck caught the light one last time as they entered the building. Inside it now were photos of children she taught, survivors she'd helped, communities she'd strengthened. But most precious was a simple image. Catherine, Chase, and her father, standing together at the memorial's dedication, all of them smiling with the pure joy of work worth doing and battles worth fighting. They had taken back more than stolen memories. They had reclaimed the very meaning of justice, of family, of hope itself. And their story, the real story, the true story, the story they chose to write together, was just beginning. The memorial door closed behind them, but the flame burned on. It would burn for generations, a testament to the truth that some memories are too powerful to steal and some spirits too strong to break. Catherine Belmont was home. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.